Hello. Today I'm going to show you how to coat a photograph in resin to make it pop. Everyone seems to like how resin coating looks, and I'm going to show you my little tips and tricks on how to work with it. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start with putting the photo on a wood panel. It makes it for a nice display. Here's some examples of some that are already done. A little beach scene, you can see how shiny it is. And the sides are very clean, no resin on them, and that's the way I like it. That's kind of my signature style. And the process I'm going to show you today is going to show you how not to drip over the edges and have a nice clean look. Here's another one with a cactus, and I've got a little bit of glitter underneath the resin. Something fun. Okay, so what I'm starting out with is a photograph. This is an 8x8, and this one I think I sent away for, but I print some if they're small enough on my $100 printer, and as long as it's on decent photo paper, you should be good to go. You don't want any kind of fine art paper where the resin could be absorbed by it, and that would give a not good look. It would kind of ruin it. So make sure it has the usual plastic coating that a photo comes with, either glossy or semi-gloss. I've done photos from Walmart, Sam's, CVS, Walgreens, and they all work fine. So anyway, I'm going to get started by mounting this first of all on this board. This is a Da Vinci board from Jerry's Artorama, and I like to use those the best. Okay, what I'm going to do first is coat it with some glue, some neutral pH glue. When you use a glue like this instead of a spray adhesive, you have a little bit more time to work with it. When you use a spray adhesive, it dries so fast that you could set it down and have it not be right, and it's hard to move it after that. So with this, you have a minute or two to work with it and get it set just right. So I'm just going to pour some glue. And I use a brayer to spread the glue. I like to make sure I get it covered really well. You don't want to have too little, because then you miss spots and it could start peeling up from the edges, and especially in the corners. So always make sure you push it right to the corners. And you can see when you use enough, you can see where you've got glue missing, and you just keep spreading it around until it's good. Okay, that looks good. I'll just show you how that looks. Okay, now I'm going to take the print, put it on here, and I can move it around where I need it. And now with a clean sheet of copy paper, I cover it, and I get another brayer, a clean one that has not been ever used in glue, and I just press like this, and I keep going over. You can kind of hear how the glue is moving around underneath and spreading out thin. Keep pressing it to the edges from every direction. Okay, and then I peek to see if it's still in the right place, because it moves a lot of times. So I see it's a little off here. I'm going to press it back, and then I'll just do another couple times. And then I'm going to press the corners, because those are the kind of really important parts to press. And now I will trim it when it's dried, but for now I will leave it, and you have to go and wash this brayer quickly before it all dries, and cover it up. And I also have these little paper towel pieces nearby so I can clean it up before I put the top on. Otherwise it's a big mess and this top gets stuck. So that's that. And I'm going to go wash this. Okay, so while this is drying, I'm going to talk about some of the tools you're going to need for when you pour the resin. So obviously you need resin, and I use art resin, and it comes in two parts. There's the resin, and then the other part was the hardener, and you use half and half, and it's very important to pour just exactly half of each one. Okay, gloves, start with gloves. everyone's got gloves these days, it seems like. And then I'm just doing a small amount, and so I know I'm going to need 2 ounces. So I have these little cups that have indicators on where the ounce is, and even smaller. Usually these are good for when you're making jewelry and small things. And then I have a paper cup that I'm going to use that I get from the dollar store, and I'll pour it in there and mix it. I'm going to use a plastic knife as a spreader. You can buy silicone ones online, like a special one for resin spreading, and that's fine. And you can get you can use a credit card, a popsicle stick, all kinds of things, whatever's comfortable. Let's see. So I have all these, like, the way to clean up resin is to use paper towels. You don't mix any water with it. Don't put it down this drain, you know, or anything like that. Use paper towels to wipe it up, and that's what works the best. So I always have different sizes available for different types of cleanup. Let's see what else. Okay, small torch. These are like, this is like a cooking torch that you can use. It's not very expensive. And okay, so if you have bigger amounts of resin that you need, I've gotten measuring cups from the Dollar Tree, and I reuse them. I'll wipe them out and then keep reusing them. And then also, if for the stuff I don't need to measure, I'll measure with, say, 2/3 cups, pour it into, you know, one of these kind of plastic cups, or some, you know, yogurt containers, any kind of plastic containers you have work fine. And those obviously I just throw out and have to clean up afterwards. Let's see. So also talking about the resin, I use art resin all the time because of, mostly for 2 reasons. It doesn't have any VOCs. I don't have to wear a mask when I use it, as opposed to some other brands where you definitely have to wear a mask and be in a well-ventilated area. I'm kind of in a small space, so that won't work very well for me. Also, as far as comparing resins go, this one has the least amount of yellowing that would probably happen over years, or if you keep your pieces in direct sunlight, which is not good for them. So those are the 2 really important reasons. Also, the people that created art resin are artists, started out being artists themselves, and so their product is geared towards artists and what they would use it for. So I just kind of appreciate their community and how they help everyone. And artresin.com is their website, and you can learn everything you need to know about resin. So I go to that all the time. They have the calculator for determining exactly how much resin to use, etc. So it's a great company, and I order directly from them. I don't feel the need to order them from Amazon. I just go right to their website so they can get all the profits. Okay, so I think this is dry enough so that I can trim it now with a knife, just the edges, if there's a little bit. Sometimes they're not always exact. And I just put, again, Dollar Tree knife. Make sure it's sharp. Just, you kind of want to keep, I have plastic here, which is good, or some kind of paper under the print, so you don't get this on maybe like some, you know, maybe you've used your mat for other things and you don't want to put it like in a, you know, paint that maybe hasn't dried or whatever. So you have to be very careful so the print doesn't touch anything it's not supposed to. So I just go around on all the edges and trim. This was actually a really good size. I mean, this is how little it came off. So, but just the fact that you can get that close and that clean, it's really just, you know, I just love the way it comes out so clean. It's really nice. Okay, so that's that. Anyway, I didn't mention the surface to work on. I have a piece of kind of thick plastic that I use underneath my cutting mat, and the cool thing with this plastic is if you get resin on it, when the resin dries, you just peel it off. Like, it comes off like magic. And so it doesn't, you know, get all dirty and have to replace it. You just take the resin off and you're good to go. I have a garbage can right behind me. Lots of garbage. Okay. Okay, I changed the view a little bit so you can get a closer up of what I'm going to be doing. So first of all, you need to make sure your surface is level. That is one of the keys to making sure that the resin doesn't drip over the edges. It's really important that it's super flat and even. So you move, my son gave me this for a Christmas present one day when he was in 4th grade. So I think it's adorable and I actually use it now. So that's cool. Anyway, so it's level that way, and then you try that way, and I just move it all over the place to make sure it's level, exactly level. And if it's not level, I'll grab some business cards and I will put them in the corner or wherever they need to be. Just, add another one if you need to, or whatever. The trick also to having it level is to make sure your table starts out level. This table that I'm using is very level. And when the table is level to begin with, then these panels that you buy are level. And so you never really have to check it after that. I mean, I don't, now that I've realized that that's how it all works. So once you determine that it's all level, then you can get going. That, like I said, that's one of the first tricks. The second, so I'm going to put my gloves on now. The next thing that is super important for the type of application I do where I don't drip over the edges is to make sure I have the right amount of resin. And to find out how much you're going to need, you can go to the Art Resin website. It's artresin.com, and then you look for the calculator. It's right at the top, easy to find, and you put in the size of your piece. So this was 8 by 8, so I type in 8 by inches width by height, and I get a number of ounces that indicates half hardener, half resin. So it told me 2 ounces. So super simple, small amount. So that means I need 1 ounce of hardener, 1 ounce of resin. The other thing I do when the other aspect of getting just the right amount of resin is important. Now, I learned through the years that using a little bit less than what they recommend is better than using the whole amount. The whole amount is probably if you wanted to drip over the sides and coat the sides, and that's a more surface area. But when you want to do just the top surface, I use a third less than what they tell me, about a third less, I kind of estimate. It's not that big of a deal if you say what they give you, but then if you pour the whole thing on and it starts dripping over the edges, it's really frustrating. I mean, you could tape it, you can sand it, and there's all these other things. Obviously, it's not that big of a deal if it goes over the edge, but I prefer the easier way where it doesn't drip, it's not as messy, there's no work afterwards, etc. So anyway, so if in this case, it told me 2 ounces, so a third less than that. Well, I would just kind of look at my little measuring cup here and say, I'm just going to go down a notch below the black one, which is 1 ounce for each, the hardener and the resin. And also what I do is each one has a top on it. This has a black top for the resin, and the other one is a white top. And I always make sure I do the black one first, so that when my mind is on something else and I start thinking, oh gosh, did I put the resiner or the hardener in? And I don't want to have 2 of the same and then it not work out. But so I always use the black first and pour it in my cup, and it's good to keep it on the plastic. So I will pour it up a little bit under the black. And I have to remember what notch I use for this one. If I'm not, going exactly by the black mark, I want to know that I went slightly under it. And I always wipe the top with a paper towel and then close it up right away. So now let's see how much I have, and I pour it in my cup. I'm going to move my picture a little bit out of the way here. So then I get my trusty knife and I just scrape it all out of there, pour it into my paper cup, there's that. So now I'm going to get the other one with the white top. And I'm going to pour in the same amount, exactly the same amount. A little bit. It's easy for it to get away from you when you're working with a small amount, so just be careful that you're paying attention. Okay, I'm going to wipe this top. And put the top back on that. Okay, now pour this in my cup. So this is basically 2 ounces, a little bit less. And I was going to say about the prices of resin. It's not the cheapest thing there is, but it's you can, as you get better with it, you buy larger amounts, and obviously it's a lot cheaper. I am going to clean this out so I can use it again with my paper towels. If you get a small starter sample size of resin, it's like $29, and it covers, I guess, like 2 square feet, which isn't very much, but like these 2 gallon, I have 2 gallon sizes, and that is $189, and that covers, they say, 64 square feet. And I always assume that I can get more out of it because I only cover the top level and not the sides. So I use this for quite a while, lasts for quite a long time, and it's a lot cheaper if you can get a larger size. So now I need to mix this for 3 minutes. And you keep scraping, scraping, scraping the sides and the bottom and the corners at the bottom. And I keep lifting my knife so that it all drips off, and then I mix some more. And you can see that it forms a lot of bubbles in there. I don't know if you can see that very well, but some days more bubbles than other. I'm not sure if it's the temperature or what it is, but some days I get more bubbles, and they eventually all will pop, so it's not that big of a deal. Scrape, scrape, scrape. 3 minutes. I mean, 3 minutes is a long time, maybe for a really small amount. I don't know if you need 3 minutes, but I'd rather just be safe than sorry. I don't think you can overmix. And when it doesn't mix right, you get a streaky, weird look to it, and it's sticky, it doesn't dry well, and there's a lot of problems. So like I say, it's better just to overmix. And probably you could mix slower, but scrape, scrape, scrape to get everything, let it drip off the knife. And after a while, you just know when 3 minutes is up. And then you could also tell because it's very clear. It goes when it's together for the first time, when you just pour one into the other, it's cloudy. And now it's getting to be very clear. It's hard to tell from this, but take my word for it. It's more clear than when I had first put them together. I should have shown you that, but I didn't think of it. So back and forth, every which way, scrape. Okay, I think that's good. So now the fun part, where we pour it on and we spread it. Now again, if you happen to have poured the amount they suggested, all you would do is maybe not pour everything out. And again, sometimes if you're spreading it and then you see you need more, you can add little bits. So it's, you know, it's actually better just be safe than sorry. Don't pour it all out and then add as you need it, because it's easier to add more than take away. Once you've poured it out, I mean, I've done it before where I try to scoop up some resin and put it back in the cup, and it gets real messy at that point. So try to avoid that. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about before I go on, which I forgot about, is the dust and cat hairs and hair and fuzz and lint and everything else like that. So I usually take it and I blow on it. I try to make sure there's nothing on it to begin with. And also, before I sit down, I'll take a lint roller and roll my shirt and pants and everything and just brush myself off, so I don't there's no possible way that, you know, anything can get on, even though it will happen anyway. At least you're lessening the chances. We had 2 cats, and oh my gosh, always finding cat hairs, and it can be frustrating. And to the point where I closed the vents so I didn't get any air blowing around from air conditioning. And, you know, I've just done all these things to prevent that. It's kind of, you know, hard to avoid at some point. You can pick it out afterwards, but it seems like you always manage to miss something. Anyway, blow on it. I don't see anything. So I'm ready to pour. And it doesn't matter where you pour it. And I'm going to leave a little bit in here in case I need to add some later. So you can just start spreading it, and slowly, and you push it towards the edges. This is the trick about not going over the edge. Once you get close to the edge, you need to stop. Make sure you don't push it too far. That's why the less you have, the easier it is to work with. It's not running by itself and, you know, falling towards the edges and you can't catch it and all that. So make it to where you can control it by having less resin. Of course, you don't want to go the other extreme and not make enough and then realize that you have to make another batch to complete it in a short amount of time. Like that is not any fun. That doesn't work very well. So better to have too much and not use it all than not have enough, for sure. The other thing I've done too is if I've had some left over, I have little tiny pieces that I'll have them ready to go in case I have any left over that I can, you know, quickly dump onto that. I don't like to waste resin. It's not cheap, so you kind of want to get the most use out of it all as you can. Also, instead of this plastic on the underneath this, you can also use parchment paper. That also works really well. So as you can see, I'm just pushing everything right to the edge. It's not dripping over. Miraculously, it's fluid dynamics or whatever causes it not to drip over, because you have just the right amount and not too much. Or I don't know the science behind it, but I imagine you can look into it if you wanted to. So I'm getting it almost all the edges. Okay, so from what I can tell, I think I've got everything to the edge. But once you kind of stand up and get a different view and have light reflecting on different areas, you find spots where you might have missed going right to the absolute edge. If you do drip over, you can get a paper towel and wipe it. You know, just get a little paper towel and just go, you know, like wipe. And then if it's not flowing, it'll stop, and you can just do a light sanding when it's done to kind of fix that spot. A lot of things are fixable. Okay, so I think I've got all of it covered, and now I'm going to use my torch, and I'm going to get all the bubbles out. Can you see? I'm not sure if you can see that there's bubbles, but there's a bunch of bubbles, and as I'm doing it, Now my torch is stuck. What happens is you get your hands, resin on your hands, and the torch gets resin on the, and then now it's sticking. Okay, here we go. Okay, I don't know if you can see it at all, but all the bubbles are popping. Very, very satisfying. Especially when you have a light source that kind of shows where the bubbles are, and you could get it, really have a good view of it and get rid of those things. So the more you torch it, the clearer it gets, and the more it looks like glass, and it's beautiful. It's just so cool, and the colors pop more on your art piece. It's just really a fun way to show your art. Okay, that looks good for now. So now, if you see a place that maybe it didn't go the edge, I like to use a toothpick, just so it doesn't do too much at a time at this point, and also you can get any, if you see a little lint or something, you could pick it off like that and do that. I don't even really see any, but see, the fact that you're standing over it with your shirt, that's why you really have to watch, you know, what's on your shirt to begin with. And then the other problem is when I use glitter and then that seeps in there from Lord knows where. That's a problem. But anyway, so then I'll wait a few minutes and then I'll do another torch, because it tends to have more bubbles pop up as we sit here. So I'm going to wait a minute and do it again. Yeah, you know, obviously, like I said, this is just one technique of, you know, not dripping over the edge. You can definitely drip over the edge. In that case, you would, if you wanted to drip over the edge and, you know, smooth it out, I would put it on top of like I shouldn't be lifting it now, but put it on top of like a paint jar or something so that it doesn't pool up around the edges. But then you also have to tape the bottom of it. That's a whole nother process, so that, because otherwise you get these big clumps of resin that harden and are hard to sand off. So if you use tape, you can just peel it off. Anyway, there's so many tips and tricks and different ways to do things. There's just, it's fun to explore and see what else you can do with resin. I like to sand it sometimes to give it a matte finish, and that's really cool. Yeah, it's a really fun product to work with. You can see more bubbles popping the second time around. Yeah, a lot more. It's like you don't see the bubbles necessarily, but then when you're torching, you can see them popping. So it's just good to always go back once, at least once, probably twice, to get them all out. A lot of them pop on their own eventually, but I don't like to take a chance. And even using 1/3 less, I still have some left. You know, you can go back and add some, say, you know, you missed a spot or it just wasn't spreading good enough. You could just add some. And that's not a problem. Now I have more bubbles. Now my torch isn't working. There we go. So especially where I just added that resin, I've got a lot of bubbles. So the last thing we're going to do is going to be to cover it so that nothing else gets on top of it, because of course if it just sat here with nothing on top of it. Oh, and I guess before that I need to say it cures in 3 days. I mean, it's hardened after 24 hours, but it really needs 3 days to cure completely. So, you know, like I say, you need to be able to cover it. A lot of times I'll put a lot of those paint cans around the corners and put a piece of cardboard on top of it, but I've started using now just a plastic container that's the right size and just put it over that. I don't have to worry about anything, any dust floating sideways and going underneath the cardboard, which I don't know, it seems like that seems to happen. So, okay, one more torching here. And I'm sure I've forgotten some important details, but of course I can't think of them at the moment. But I'm going to cover this with a box, just a container, and of course I make sure that I kind of wipe out the inside so that I'm not bringing more dust into it. And I approach it from low instead of high. If I approach from high, I might trap some dust into it. I'm very obsessed with the lint part of it. So anyway, it's now covered, and okay, so we're done. It's covered. I'm going to leave it this way for, 24 hours. I'll peek at it probably after, maybe tomorrow or something, and see where it's at, see if I have to sand it and redo it, because that's what you can do. If you see a long piece of fuzz or lint or cat hair, you can sand it and then put another coat on top of it. So that, there are ways to, around it if it does happen. And if you have problems, you can sand it and redo it, so not all is lost. Anyway, I think that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. It's a lot of fun. I hope you try it and have fun with it. You can ask me questions about it. I'm glad to help people with it. I've enjoyed helping others get started in the process because it is a lot of fun. Okay, thanks. Bye.